Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at the green zone overrun by ordinary Iraqis for the first time since the U.S. invasion of 2003. With us from Baghdad, Iraqi member of parliament, Diallo Saudi, the leader of Moqtada al-Sadr's al-Ahrar parliamentary bloc. Thank you for joining us again from Baghdad. Thanks from London, Louie AlKhatib, fellow at Columbia University. From Abu Dhabi, Faisal Al-Yafi, chief columnist for UAE Daily, The National. And here in the studio, Julien Théron, Middle East analyst at Sciences Po and its Saint-Germain-en-Laye branch in the western suburbs of Paris. Exactly. Many thanks for being back with us. We were talking about Moqtada al-Sadr, this Shia cleric, the driving force who, for those demonstrations over the weekend, he always true to his anti-U.S. credentials, like when he spoke to France 24 in an exclusive interview last June.
The Americans always do the same thing. First of all, they create discord somewhere, and then they stoke the fire. They exacerbate tensions with weapons by fostering sectarianism, exacerbating the tensions, and the Americans let the protagonists kill each other, and they observe the situation, and they enjoy the sight of the bloodshed.
Diallo Saudi, is that the tone that Moqtada al-Sadr employs today?
Before moving to this point, I'd like to comment on what Dr. al-Khatib has just mentioned. It is true that the Sadr has been participating in the Sadr movement has been participating in the government. But now, in order to prove that we are faithful, we are true to what suggested by us, we have withdrawn our ministers. They submitted their resignation to Dr. Hadi al-Abadi. We told our partners that we are not going to nominate any ministers from our behalf. That is to say, we actually would like to implement what we are suggesting, what we are proposing. That's why we would like to see a new cabinet, different from the cabinets that were established since 2003. I mean, this should be made clearly to
all right, so a call for new politics, but is it the same Moqtada al-Sadr? He's in Tehran this Monday, still virulently anti-U.S. What does Moqtada al-Sadr today want? Does he want to be a leader of Iraq?
No, actually, he just wants a free Iraq, one united Iraq without any intervention. No intervention is accepted neither from Iran, nor from the United States, nor from any other Arab country. Iraq is built by people. Iraq is dominated by Iraqis, not necessarily by Shia or Sunnis. Suggested that the Iraqi government shouldn't be the Shia government or a religious government. It should be a civil government, actually composed by the different Iraqi components. We would like to have a country that is prosperous, a country that has good relationships with neighboring countries, with the international community, but also not dictated by the American decision or by the superpowers' decision. These are
Dia, I'm going to have to interrupt you because the line is getting worse, unfortunately. We're going to try to call you back and improve the quality of the connection. I want to get the reaction of Faisal Al-Yafi there. You heard Dia al-Saudi saying Moqtada al-Sadr, all he wants is the best interest of Iraq at this point.
Yes, the rebranding of Moqtada al-Sadr appears to be moving apace. The Iraqi Sunnis will remember that what are now the peace brigades, the militias that are controlled by Moqtada al-Sadr, are now called the peace brigades, previously called the Mahdi army, was responsible, let's just say if we're impartial, accused of various sectarian attacks in 2006, 2007, thousands of Sunnis, Iraqi Sunnis dead. And I don't think that has been forgotten among the Iraqi Sunni population, nor should it be. Moqtada al-Sadr is a man who has become a chameleon in recent years. He returned from the holy city of Qom, he continued his studies, and now he's back trying to play an important role in Iraq's politics. I think that there's an important distinction that needs to be drawn between what is happening among the wider population, this feeling that there does need to be a change in the government, and the role that Moqtada al-Sadr himself is playing. At the moment, those two are hand in glove. But for a period of time, but for this period of time, that may be the case, but it may very rapidly change. One of the problems that I have with the storming of the Green Zone, despite celebrating elements of it, is that you are putting too much power in the hands of one man, an unelected cleric, after all. It is al-Abadi and the parliament who have been elected, who are the legitimate government. So it worries me, even though I think it is a step in the right direction.
Yes, I completely agree. There are two dimensions. The first one is the social one inside the Iraqi population, and the second one is the political one. What is Iraq today? It's a very divided state. We know that a part of the Sunnis actually split entirely from Iraqi politics within the Islamic State. A part is, again, the Islamic State, but not integrated in Iraqi politics. The Kurds are planning a referendum on independence. So the basis of the power in Baghdad is actually Shia-led, and there is difference between different parties, between the Sadrist movement, between Dawah party, between the Supreme Islamic Iraqi Council. So there is kind of fight inside the Shia community to get in power. Moqtada al-Sadr, in this context, is a very particular a politician, because he had a complete movement with the militia, the Mahdi army, and then he transformed them in peace brigades or peace companies. And now he's kind of the lone man in Iraqi Shia-led politics. But of course, what we see is very favorable for him to get back in power.
Diallo Saudi, why is Moqtada al-Sadr in Tehran?
Well, this was not good by his office.
I'm sorry.
I don't think he has a trouble to the Haram. The news come.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you because, again, the Skype connection is poor. We're going to try to call you back one more time. Apologies for that. Hopefully it'll be a third time lucky. Let me bring in Louie AlKhatib on this. Louie, your thoughts on, has Moqtada al-Sadr changed his stripes?
Well, one of the big challenges that Iraqis are facing is understanding Moqtada al-Sadr's detailed plans and clear intention. I mean, the overall message in terms of like asking, calling for a technocrat government, this is very clear, and that was something translated in the initial ministerial list that he proposed. He proposed individuals that none of them belonged to the Sadrist trend. In fact, most of them seculars. Which is something, it's a positive step forward. Having said that, when it comes to the actual, the political stance, I mean, I've heard speeches of him saying that the current political bloc, the Sadrist bloc, al-Ahrar, in parliament and his minister, they don't represent him. And they don't represent the Sadrist, and they just have some level of cooperation with them. So what does he mean by this? The other thing is that, yes, he enjoys a significant level of power, but all these powers, and very much like the power that Ammar al-Hakim enjoys or himself, Moqtada al-Sadr, enjoys, these are some sort of hereditary things. I mean, they inherited that power from the marji'iyya of the fathers. So, I mean, as individuals, they would have ended up struggling to really becoming what we see as kingmakers or the aspired Gandhis of Iraq. Right, so that's what really kind of like confused the overall audience in Iraq and the international community when trying to understand what do they need. I mean, having said that, I mean, they might hold, I mean, Moqtada al-Sadr himself might, he could make a short-term victory, but when it comes to the long-term and sustaining a presence and really maintaining the course of establishing or helping in establishing a technocrat administration and competent and accountable. This requires real cooperation with the various leaders. It requires a clear and detailed plans, and not someone who comes, say a statement and say, okay, I will disappear for 2 months. This is very confusing.
All right, and as we know, this tussle still going on over whether or not the current prime minister can form that technocratic government, as it's put. This all creating a bit of a holding pattern as well for the United States. The Vice President, Joe Biden, who's been the White House's point man on Iraq, in Baghdad last week, partly to reassure his hosts after President Obama stated that the U.S. planned to, quote, assess how the current government turmoil in Iraq plays itself out over the next couple of weeks before committing more aid money. Is that the right way to go about it, Louie AlKhatib?
Sorry, the line was cutting. Can you repeat the last question?
Is the Obama administration right to say we're going to wait before we commit more aid money?
Well, when it comes to aid money, Iraq really need to implement radical reforms, and the leadership need to be very frank and candid with the people. What does this mean, the radical reform? This means that any superfluous appointment, like the masses, the millions that have been hired over the past years and doing nothing, sitting in offices, earning salaries for no output, they really need to be kind of like rehabilitated in some sort of program and being advised to find jobs. So the government need to lay off a lot of people that produce zero contribution to the state. Second, the salaries need to be reviewed significantly. At the moment, Iraq spending anything between $3 to $4 billion US of salaries. I mean, on these levels, we're going to end up draining the full budget. I mean, I wouldn't say budget, but every single dollar that we earn from the oil production, because we can hardly earn more than $50 billion this year, if not less. Let alone the payment to the oil companies and so on, and other maintenance costs for the state, and the cost of maintaining the internally displaced people, as well as the cost of the war on terror.
Right.
So, I mean, any kind of like help, financial help, even like in form of like debts from the IMF and borrowing from IMF and World Bank, I mean, we're going to further burden the future administration to deal with these debts if we don't really take radical steps in reforming the economic structure.
All right, so there's an urgency to reform, is what you're saying. Amid this political tussle and with the pressure building on the current prime minister, what have we got else in the news this Monday? An explosives-laden car detonating in the capital. At least 18 Shiite pilgrims killed as they commemorated the anniversary of the death of a revered 8th century imam. ISIS claiming responsibility for that attack, as well as the 2 car bombs in the southern city of Samawa that killed at least 31. Faisal Yafai, the international community tends to get jaded when they see all these attacks that continue to happen on a regular basis. How do you explain the fact that 13 years on, we're seeing these kinds of bombings, these horrific bombings?
Well, if the international community gets jaded, I can tell you it's nothing compared to how the Iraqi people feel. They are the ones being blown apart by the bombs. They are the ones suffering sex slavery under the ISIL caliphate. They are the ones who are trapped inside the city of Mosul. They are the ones whose Yazidi girls have been enslaved. This is all a failure of the Iraqi sectarian system. The original sin, I sometimes say the second original sin, the original sin of being de-Baathification, but the second original sin was the enforcement of this sectarian system, a sectarian system that allocates quotas based on your ethnicity, based on your religious sectarian identity, is not one that would work in a pluralistic society like Iraq. The Americans should have recognized this, or they should have been better advised, if only because the other country in the region that tried a sectarian system Lebanon has singularly failed to create a functioning state for so many years. And now what you have in Lebanon with the emergence of Hezbollah is a state within a state. And what appears to be happening with the popular mobilization committees and with various other Shia-led political organizations is the emergence of a secondary state inside Iraq. The sectarian element to this cannot be overlooked. It has been 13 years of a failed political system. And if they do not get a strong grip on it, it will spiral out of control. Louie was explaining earlier why the sectarianism has contributed to so much waste. It's contributed to so much waste because once you have this system in place, everybody is seeking to maintain their political power. It becomes a tribalistic society. That is not the best of Iraq. The best of Iraq is a pluralistic society, one where you have Christians, Yazidis, Kurds, Jews, Muslims, all represented in the parliament, working cross-sectarian lines, not represented as Shia or as Sunnis, but represented as Iraqis.
Diallo Saudi, you agree? The two original sins, you might say, after the U.S.-led invasion. One, the de-Baathification, that is the purging of anyone associated with Saddam Hussein, and the second, the political quotas?
No, actually, I don't agree with this reading. First, because this is not just happening in Iraq. After the Nazi Germany, after the Nazi system was toppled, I think the Nazi system was eradicated. In Tunisia, when Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali regime was toppled, the supporters of this regime were all eradicated uprooted from the government. What happened in Iraq is not something new, is not something novel. Actually, this is that my friend is talking about of having a sectarian regime. I think it is not fair to describe the current regime in Iraq as sectarian, because when you see the division of the authorities, the executive branch is ruled by a member of our party, which is a religious party that belongs to the Shia community. But in front of this, we have also the parliament that is ruled by a Sunni Iraqi, and the president of the country is from a Kurdish party, and he is a secular person. So what does he mean when he says a secular regime? Does he mean the executive branch, the legislative branch, or the president's office? I think it is a deformed democratic sort of government that the United States wanted to represent all Iraqis, all the Iraqi components, but highlighting the ethno-religious division of Iraq. Being the majority of Iraqis, the Shia were given the executive branch, and in this, the executive branch was recognized as the most powerful. That's why it was allocated to the majority of Iraqis. And then comes the legislative branch that was given to the Sunnis, who constitute the other majority, or the second majority, and then the other component of the Iraqi society, which is the Kurdish component, given the post of the president of the country. This was the quota system that was established under the American occupation, which marred all the Iraqi business of politics. And now all the attempts that are undertaken by Sayyid Moqtada al-Sadr were to undermine this quota system. Why should the prime minister be from the Shia community? Why shouldn't he be Sunni, for example? Why should the speaker of the parliament be Sunni? Why shouldn't he be a Kurd or from any other minority in Iraq? So that's why we believe the Iraqi government or the authorities, the different authorities in Iraq, shouldn't be ruled by religious or by ethnic labels or brands. They should be ruled by Iraqis who belong to the Iraqi society, and this are going to recognize all the diversity, all the plurality of the Iraqi society.
All right, so let me just bring in, because we're running short on time, Julien Théron, you heard our panelists there agreeing in a way that they don't want Iraq to become a Lebanon but a more explosive one.
That's what I was going to say. Yes, indeed. We see these kind of troubles already in Lebanon, where there's a very sectarian regime. And you know that nowadays in Lebanon, the regime is still blocked. So we see that it doesn't work much. And there is some kind of civil movements over there as well, condemning this sectarian share of power. But instead, in Iraq, it's even worse. Why there's the Islamic State, the Kurds, and so on. And let's face the fact. What ask some protesters, like for the dissolution of the parliament and some new elections. So let's think about it. But what would happen within the Islamic State territory? Nobody would vote, of course. What about the Kurds who want a referendum before the next US president, meaning next year? So would it be possible for them to vote, or would they have a referendum before? So we see that the situation is completely blocked. So it's kind of small war inside Shia parties and so on that might decide the entire fate of the country, even though it's not possible to get a very Iraqi unity like it was asked, like right now.
All right, Julien Théron, I want to thank you. I want to thank Diallo Saudi for joining us from Baghdad. I want to thank Louie AlKhatib for being with us from London, and Faisal Al-Yafai in the United Arab Emirates. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to James Creedon.
Hi, François.
James, it was interesting because some people describing it as a, it was you, Julien Théron, describing it as a mini Arab Spring, what happened on, a sample of an Arab Spring that would happen over the weekend.
Right. Well, the headlines are certainly indicating a big change, perhaps not the most positive headlines, the ones that I have chosen. Why Obama's Iraq policy is collapsing. We're seeing foreign policy with Iraq hanging by a thread. Kunduz fallout spreads. Cartoonists as well indicating that things are not looking very good. This in al-Awsat.com, you see the main trunk of the body here is Iraq, and you have limbs being torn off left, right and centre. It's a gory image, and the arm being held in this guy's hand is representative of Anbar province, and he's saying it's an isolated region. In other words, Iraq being dismembered, so perhaps a pessimistic take on things there.
Anbar, of course, where ISIS has a firm stronghold in places like Fallujah.
Absolutely. This image, which I saw you retweet earlier, François, this was taken near the green zone. You see a guy diving into a pool, and it is, of course, evocative of this famous and iconic image of the statue of Saddam Hussein being pulled down. And indeed, scenes from the Iraqi capital would make Saddam laugh. Says this Twitter user, 13 years later, the West has failed to install said operational democracy. And I suppose we're certainly seeing all the evidence of that this weekend. Now, two indicators of, outside of just the elements of the debate that you've been discussing, François, two further indicators of how things are not going so well in Iraq. Al Jazeera has been shut down in Iraq. You have Human Rights Watch here reacting to that, saying Iraqis have a right to hear a variety of perspective on current events. That's Joe Stark of Human Rights Watch. He also points to the fact that a Cairo-based privately owned channel, al-Baghdadiya TV, was shut down in early March. And Reporters Without Borders has ranked Iraq 153 out of 180 in terms of safety for news media staff. So that's another indicator of, I guess, how things aren't going so well in Iraq. A second indicator, the Wall Street Journal, Iraq's doctors face threats of violence. This is quite a worrying report, really, saying that 330 doctors left Iraq in the last 2.5 months of 2015, so from mid-October through to December. Doctors are leaving en masse because of a breakdown in public order. Some medical professionals are being attacked, indeed, by grieving families who are taking revenge. It appears that in the wards of some hospitals there are even fistfights between doctors and patients' families because of the situation, the fractured nature of healthcare and all the rest.
Iraqis make a sizable minority among those that are making their way to Europe. In your view, Julien Théron, are they migrants or are they refugees, those that are coming?
Refugees, legal statute, so they might be asylum seeker. when they come to Europe, and they might, regarding to their personal situation, they might get asylum or not, regarding to the threats against them, but they are migrants until they come, and they are asylum seekers, and they might get the refugee statute eventually.
Right, and I guess it is a good indicator of whether or not you need to leave a country when just decent healthcare can't be provided, and when doctors themselves feel they have to leave. It reminds us, of course, of the situation across the border in Syria, where there was quite a lot of attention given to the bombing of a hospital by the Assad regime, where one doctor, a nurse, three nurses, a dentist, 22 civilians were killed, and indeed that got a lot of attention. His name is Wasim Mazi. He was the only pediatrician in the city of Aleppo and chose to stay to deal with them. So it draws attention again to the whole issue of how doctors and indeed hospitals can be in various different ways under threat at a time of unrest or war. On that topic, Doctors Without Borders are really drumming up this campaign. Hospitals and doctors, etc., should not be a target. This ahead of a UN Security Council discussion about that very topic tomorrow.
And it's very important to say that, indeed, bombing hospitals or civilians is not a war action.
Right.
It's kind of massacre.
That's right. So perhaps that will be restated tomorrow at the UN Security Council, one would hope so.
All right, I want to thank you, James. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.